She hid her son from his millionaire father, but when the baby was born, she made the hardest choice. Isabelle Moore once walked away from the only man she ever loved, Nathaniel Cruz, a powerful New York attorney, carrying a heavy secret, their unborn child. For 5 long years, she raised her son in silence, building a quiet life in a coastal town. But when fate unexpectedly brings Nathaniel back, a seemingly ordinary moment threatens to unravel everything. Can love overcome the wounds of the past, or are some distances too wide to bridge? So sit down, pour yourself a warm cup of tea, and let me take you into their world. The night wind howled through the glass windows of their Manhattan apartment, slicing through the silence like a blade. There was no laughter, no music. Only 2 people sitting across from each other in the dim light. One ready to leave, the other clinging to what little was left. "You want me to sign the papers tonight, don't you?" Nathaniel Cruz's voice was calm, not angry, but cold enough to chill bone. Isabelle Moore nodded faintly, her fingers gripping the divorce papers. She had prepared for this moment, or at least she thought she had. "Fine," he said, his gaze never wavering, "but before that, you owe me one night." She looked up, stunned. "You're kidding," she whispered, her heart tightening. "No," Nathaniel replied, deep and resolute. "One last night, then I'll sign. No questions, no conditions." The room fell into a tense silence. Isabelle searched for something to say, an excuse, an escape. But the look in his eyes, the same eyes that once loved her fiercely, made it impossible to say no. "If I agree, you'll keep your word?" "I always do, Isabelle." She nodded slowly. The room was cold, but her heart was colder. Isabelle walked toward him like entering foreign territory. Nathaniel stood, meeting her halfway. "You're too slow," he murmured by her ear, his hand sliding around her waist. His breath was hot against her neck, sending a shiver down her spine. She had never seen Nathaniel like this, not gentle, but desperate, desperate to hold on. "Please, be gentle," she whispered, but her words were lost in a fierce, urgent kiss. This was not like before. There was no patience, no hesitation, only longing, pain. Nathaniel was holding on to something slipping through his fingers. Her. "I'm sorry, Isabelle," he whispered as their bodies became one. "I don't know how else to keep you." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheek. Her heart still loved him, even if her mind had given up long ago. She didn't do this out of pity. She did it because deep down she had never truly left him. The night wasn't long, yet it stretched into something timeless. 3 times Nathaniel pulled her into his arms, afraid she might vanish. There were hugs that felt like farewells, kisses that punished, yet pleaded. As dawn approached, Isabelle drifted to sleep in his arms. His chest rose and fell steadily, his hand still wrapped around hers. But inside her, the ache grew stronger, because she knew when morning came, she would walk away. From the man who once meant the world to her. Isabelle woke as the first light of morning slipped through the curtains. Nathaniel was still asleep, his arm draped lightly across her waist, his breath steady and soft like distant ocean waves. She lay still for a moment, memorizing the feeling, the warmth of someone who once meant everything. But she knew if she stayed a second longer, she wouldn't be able to leave. Carefully, she removed his arm from her body, inch by inch, afraid to wake him. Her feet touched the cold floor as she stood. She turned back one last time. Nathaniel was still sleeping, his brow slightly furrowed, as if burdened by heavy dreams. No goodbye, no explanation, just a handwritten note left on the table. "I'm sorry." The small coastal town in Maine welcomed her with a silence that stung. Isabelle changed her last name, rented a modest little house. Old, but safe enough to start over. She found work the very next day. She couldn't use her degree. Applying to any corporate firm would risk her past catching up with her. So she took what she could: laundry services, house cleaning, selling rice cakes and sweets at the weekend market. Anything to survive, anything for a child. Lucas, the result of that final night, was born a few months later. He became her entire world, a reason to keep going, a reason to breathe through days that passed in quiet repetition. Isabelle never spoke about Lucas's father. When he asked, she simply smiled and said, "He's somewhere far away, where no one can reach him." She knew the lie wouldn't last forever, but she needed time, not to forget Nathaniel, but to learn how to stand in front of him again without breaking. By day, she was a busy mother, a silent worker. By night, after Lucas fell asleep, she would sit alone and watch the stars reflect on the ocean's surface, wondering where Nathaniel was, if he was well, if he ever thought about her, about them. But no matter how weak her heart felt, Isabelle never allowed herself to look back. She had chosen to leave. And now she had to live like the past never happened. Life in the small coastal town was neither rich nor lavish, but it was enough. Isabelle learned to appreciate the simplest things: a roof that stayed warm through winter, a hot meal every evening, and Lucas's smile as he ran home from kindergarten. Lucas was now over 5 years old, quick-witted, polite, and with deep, thoughtful eyes, just like his father's. Isabelle often froze when looking at him, not just because of maternal love, but because every time she looked into Lucas's eyes, she was pulled back to the life she had left behind. "Lucas, why did you put all your toys away so neatly?" "Because you're tired, Mama. I don't want you to clean up," he replied simply. Isabelle's heart tightened. He was far too young to understand sacrifice. And yet, since he could walk, Lucas had always sensed her emotions. Though Isabelle never spoke of his father, Lucas would ask, "Mama, what's my daddy's name?" "Lucas, you have me. I'm enough." "But if I had a dad, I bet he'd like the rice cakes I made, right?" Isabelle said nothing. She just pulled him close and held him. There wasn't a day that passed where she didn't think of Nathaniel, but she didn't allow herself to hope. She had made her choice. She had to live with it. Isabelle's day began at 5 a.m. She cooked breakfast, packed Lucas's lunch, and then headed out to wash clothes for families in the neighborhood. In the afternoons, she sold rice cakes and sweets at a small market near the beach. Every cake was carefully wrapped, evenly sliced. No matter how tired, she was always precise, because she wasn't just selling food, she was feeding a small dream of her own. "You should get a booth in the town center," the market manager once told her. "You're a great baker. More people would come looking for you." But Isabelle only smiled. She didn't want attention. She didn't want to be seen. She wasn't running. She was protecting herself. At night, when mother and son curled up on their tiny bed, "Is it because my dad doesn't like me that he never comes home?" Lucas asked while coloring on the living room floor, his voice barely a whisper, but loud enough to freeze Isabelle in the kitchen. Her heart clenched. How many times now? How many times had he asked this so innocently? And how many times had she spun a new story in response? "That's not it, sweetheart," Isabelle said softly, drying her hands before sitting beside him. "Your dad is just very far away, somewhere no one can easily reach." Lucas looked at her, those deep eyes searching for truth behind her gentle words. "Far like the moon?" "Maybe even farther," Isabelle replied with a sad smile. He nodded, then resumed coloring. But a few moments later, he asked again, "When will he come home?" "Maybe, when you're a little older, when you're strong enough to meet him." She didn't know why she said that. Maybe to postpone the pain. Or maybe she herself wasn't strong enough to tell Lucas the truth. Every question he asked was another quiet wound. It didn't bleed, but it lingered. Isabelle didn't hate the past. She feared it might return and take the only thing she had left, Lucas, he was her entire world, and she would do anything to protect him, even if that meant being a liar. That night, after Lucas had fallen asleep, Isabelle sat by the window, the soft glow of the streetlights slipping through the blinds. She quietly opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. She and Nathaniel, holding hands, smiling wide. She had never let Lucas see that picture, because sometimes memories were beautiful, but the truth behind them was too cruel for a child to understand. Isabelle believed that life would simply carry on, quietly, peacefully, not rich, not romantic, but enough. She didn't have love anymore, but she had Lucas, her entire sky. But fate never asks permission before it arrives. It never knocks before entering. And one day, just like any other, it began. Not with noise, not with warning, but with a familiar taste, and a pair of eyes that made a long broken heart begin to tremble again. Nathaniel Cruz didn't often leave the city, but this time he needed a break. Work at the prosecutor's office was suffocating, and the media was relentless. When his godmother, Helen, invited him to spend a few days at her seaside estate in Maine, he agreed. He didn't expect a plate of food to shake him to his core. Spaghetti. Seemingly ordinary. But the sauce. Something about the sauce made his chest tighten. He twirled the noodles with his fork and took a bite. And then, time stopped. A slight heat. Perfect sweetness. Fresh chopped basil. Exactly how Isabelle used to make it. His favorite dish, the one she'd make on his birthdays or after long days at work. He froze. His heart began to pound. It was just spaghetti, but he knew that flavor. He couldn't forget it if he tried. After the meal, Nathaniel walked around the estate. The sea breeze helped clear his mind. He stepped into the downstairs restroom to fix his tie in the mirror. Just then, a small boy entered, brown hair, lean frame, and eyes that stirred something deep inside him. The boy went straight to the sink, washed his hands with deliberate care. "Hi, sir," he said politely. "Hello there," Nathaniel replied with a faint smile. But inside, something shifted. The boy turned, tilting his head. "You look kind of messy. Your hair's sticking up in the back." Nathaniel chuckled. "You're the first one to tell me that. Boys should be neat. That's what my mom says." "She sounds like a smart lady." A quiet pause lingered. Nathaniel looked closer. Those deep brown eyes, the delicate nose, the face. It was Isabelle's. It couldn't be a coincidence. It was too exact. "What's your name, kiddo?" "Lucas." The name hit Nathaniel like a knife. He kept his composure, nodding. "That's a great name. I'm named after one of my mom's favorite comic book characters." That evening, Nathaniel didn't touch his dinner. He sat in the parlor, holding a glass of wine he never drank. Everything around him blurred. He couldn't stop thinking about the spaghetti, the child, the eyes, the name, Lucas. No, he wasn't being paranoid. His instincts had never betrayed him before. When Helen entered the room with her usual smile, he asked immediately, "Who made dinner tonight?" "Our new cook," she replied. "Isabelle, if I'm remembering right." A crash went off in his mind. His hand almost dropped the glass. "Isabelle?" "Yes, lovely young woman, great cook, very reserved, has a son named Lucas. He plays with my little girl often." Nathaniel stood up. He couldn't hear anything else. Just one truth screamed in his head. "She's here. Isabelle." And this time, he wouldn't let her run. Nathaniel stepped out into the back garden of the estate, his mind buzzing with 1,000 thoughts. Lucas, Isabelle, the food, that face. Every nerve in his body screamed that something wasn't right, or maybe something was finally falling into place. And then he saw her, Isabelle, standing beneath the old oak tree, gently tying Lucas's hair back with a ribbon. The breeze lifted strands of her hair as she leaned over, her face turned slightly. Focused, patient, soft, just like he remembered her when she cared for others. But this time, it was her child. Lucas giggled. She laughed with him. That smile. It punched the air right out of Nathaniel's lungs. She was still beautiful, but she looked thinner, more fragile, like time had drained the light from her without asking. She looked up, and their eyes met. Just 1 second, but it stretched into forever. Both froze. No words, no movement, only silence, heavy with history. His mind replayed that last night. Hers replayed the moment she walked away. Lucas turned toward her. "Mom, who's that man?" Isabelle flinched like waking from a nightmare. Nathaniel took 1 step forward, his lips parting. But no words came out. His world tilted. She saw the shift in his eyes, from shock to hope to betrayal. Her chest tightened, her breath caught. And then she grabbed Lucas's hand, turned, and ran, never looked back. Nathaniel didn't move. She ran again, just like before. But this time she didn't just take his heart, she took a child with her. Lucas. That boy, those eyes, that nose, the way he tilted his head when he asked questions. "Oh God," Nathaniel whispered. His heart clenched around a truth he hadn't dared to speak aloud. "Is Lucas really my son?" Isabelle knew she couldn't run forever. Not this time. Not with that look in his eyes, and not with Lucas by her side, carrying the face of the man she once loved beyond reason. She walked home, her hand still wrapped tightly around her son's. But her heart was in chaos. She didn't dare look back, but she knew he would come. Soon, and this time she would have to face him. There was no more place left to hide. Isabelle barely made it through the door when Lucas shouted, "I'm going to wash my hands, Mama," and dashed into the bathroom. She stood frozen at the threshold, heart pounding wildly. Her palms were damp, though the air outside was cool. She didn't have to turn around to know he was coming. Then, a knock on the door. Firm, steady, just like him. Isabelle walked slowly toward it, each step pressing deeper into the past. She opened the door. Nathaniel stood there. His eyes weren't angry, not quite hurt, just empty. And that emptiness scared her more than rage. "We need to talk," he said, without ceremony. She nodded, stepped aside. He entered. The small house suddenly felt tight. Nathaniel didn't sit. Neither did she. They stood several feet apart, close enough to hear each other breathe, far enough to feel 5 years of distance. "He's my son, isn't he?" His voice was hoarse but certain. Isabelle said nothing. "Lucas, he's my son, Isabelle." Her hands clenched, lips trembling. Finally, she nodded. "Yes." One word, small, but it hit like a wave that shattered every wall he'd tried to build. He turned away, let out a bitter laugh. "Were you never going to tell me?" "I was scared," she whispered. "Scared you'd take him away. Scared you'd hate me. Hate him." "I never hated you," he said, cutting her off. His voice cracked. "I only hated that you left, without a word, without a trace. Do you know how long I looked for you?" Tears welled up. She nodded. "I know, and I'm sorry, but I didn't know what else to do. I'm not as strong as you thought." "Not strong?" He stepped closer. "Did you think I wouldn't make a good father? That I wouldn't love my own child?" "No," she broke down. "I knew you'd love him completely. That's what I was afraid of, that when you did, you'd have more right over him than me, and I'd lose everything. You stole 5 years of fatherhood from me, Isabelle. 5 years. And I lived 5 years in fear," she sobbed. "Do you think I didn't want to share this with you? Every time Lucas asked about his dad, I died a little inside." Silence, heavy and raw. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the space between them. Then Nathaniel sat down, covering his face. For the first time, Isabelle saw him crumble. "I don't know whether to be angry or grateful," he whispered. "I have a son, and he's grown up without me." Isabelle knelt in front of him, placing a hand gently on his knee. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm only asking, don't be angry with Lucas. He's innocent." He looked at her, long and hard, then nodded. "I won't be, and I won't walk away. I want to be part of his life." She sobbed, relieved. "I won't stop you. I promise." Just then, Lucas stepped out, clutching his stuffed bunny. "Mama, that man, he's still here?" Nathaniel quickly wiped his eyes and forced a smile. "Hi, Lucas. Can I call you something special?" The boy blinked. "Everyone just calls me Lucas." Isabelle stood up, her hand resting gently on her son's shoulder. "Lucas, this man, he's very important. Do you want to hear a very special story?" He nodded, and at that moment, Nathaniel knew. His journey as a father began right here. After Lucas went to bed, the small house fell silent again. Only two people remained, once husband and wife, now two near strangers, standing between something unfamiliar yet unbreakable. Nathaniel sat quietly for a long time, eyes staring into nowhere. The feelings inside him were hard to name. Part of him wanted to rage, part of him wanted to hold his son and never let go. But mostly there was emptiness, the kind that comes from years stolen by time. "I don't know whether to feel joy or grief," he said softly. "All I know is I have a son, and I can't be away from him another day." Isabelle lowered her head, fingers clasping tightly in her lap. Nathaniel drew in a breath and looked directly at her. "I want you and Lucas to come back to New York." "With me?" Isabelle looked up. For a brief second, panic flickered in her eyes. "Live? With you?" "Yes, I can't let my son live far from me anymore. I've already missed too much." "But my work here, Lucas's school?" "I'll take care of everything. School, housing, whatever you need. I just need you to say yes." Isabelle said nothing. Her eyes drifted to the window. Outside was the quiet night sky, the life she had built alone with her son, a world she had once planned to stay in forever. But now, everything was shifting. "I won't force you," Nathaniel added, "but I hope you won't refuse. Not for me, for Lucas. He deserves a real family." Silence stretched. Then she nodded, slowly, barely audible. "Okay, I agree." Nathaniel felt his heart clench. He knew she was still afraid he'd take their son, afraid he'd hurt her again. But she hadn't walked away, and for him, that was enough to start again. Isabelle packed in silence. No one said it out loud, but they all knew. Going back wasn't just about changing addresses. It was about walking straight into a past that still had open wounds. On the train to New York, Lucas slept curled in her arms, but Isabelle stayed awake the entire ride. She didn't know what waited for her on the other side. Only one thing was certain. From now on, they would live together. But did living together make them a family? The luxury apartment in Manhattan was unlike any place Isabelle had ever lived. Everything was too perfect. Walnut floors, soft lighting, every item placed with careful precision. Nothing felt accidental, and maybe that's why she felt so out of place. Lucas, on the other hand, adjusted quickly. His new room was decorated exactly to his liking. Superhero figurines, comic books, a green bunk bed. It was like stepping into a dream world. But Isabelle slept in a strange bed in a room far from Nathaniel's. Each night she could hear the ticking clock echoing in her chest. Nathaniel tried. He took Lucas to school, joined them for breakfast, played with his son in the evenings. When time allowed, he spoke to Isabelle, politely, briefly, never too much. No accusations, no anger. And somehow, that quiet calm unsettled her more than rage would have. One evening, after Lucas had gone to bed, Isabelle stood at the sink washing dishes. Nathaniel walked in, holding a glass of water. She could feel his gaze behind her, but she didn't turn around. "Are you doing okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just still adjusting." "So am I." Silence filled the kitchen. After a while, she turned to him. "You're not angry with me?" Nathaniel shook his head. "What good would it do? We've already lost too much time." She looked at him, and for the first time in years, she didn't see pain in his eyes. Only emptiness. "I know I did wrong," she whispered, "but living here, with you like this, I don't know where I stand." "I don't know what you are to me anymore either," he said bluntly. Her heart clenched. She finished rinsing the last glass, dried her hands, and walked out of the kitchen quickly. Nathaniel didn't call after her. He let her go, the way she once walked away from him. Life moved on. The three of them lived under one roof. Shared meals, shared schedules, shared responsibilities. But not emotions. There were no fights, but there was no closeness either. Isabelle felt like a guest. Nathaniel, a distant host. Only Lucas loved freely, both of them. One day, Lucas ran up to Isabelle with a drawing. He had drawn a house with 3 stick figures standing side by side. "Mama, this is our home, right?" She forced a smile, brushing his hair back. "Yes, it is." But deep inside, she knew. They lived together, but they weren't a family. Not yet. Nathaniel loved Lucas. That much was undeniable. He woke early to take him to school, patiently sat through homework sessions, and never missed a single parent-teacher meeting. Lucas admired him deeply. "Dad's like a superhero," he once said, and Isabelle smiled through the lump in her throat. She often watched them from a distance. At times her heart warmed at the sight, but other times it chilled, because she realized the love stopped at their son. Toward her, Nathaniel still kept a firm, invisible wall. He was never cruel, but he wasn't warm either. Polite, civil, distant. One evening, she caught him in the living room, reading aloud to Lucas. His voice was low and soothing, sometimes playful enough to make Lucas burst into laughter. Isabelle stood still, not wanting to interrupt their moment. But when his eyes accidentally met hers, just briefly, the look was cold, almost like a winter breeze. Not angry, just indifferent. She turned and walked quietly back to her room, tears slipping down without a sound. In the days that followed, she tried harder. She cooked the dishes he used to love, cleaned every corner of the house with care, started conversations when she could, but was often met with nods, one-word replies, or silence. She didn't blame him. She understood. He was hurt, and the pride of a man abandoned wasn't something that healed overnight. But she also understood something else, something that kept her trying. She still loved him, always had, always would. And this time, she wasn't going to run. Saturday afternoon, Isabelle took Lucas to the nearby public library. While he eagerly browsed the children's section, she stopped by the coffee counter in the lobby. But as she turned around, her cup nearly slipped from her hand. "Isabelle?" A familiar voice called out. She froze. After all these years, she still recognized that voice. Slowly, she looked up. Jordan Blake, the man she once believed was her forever, before he betrayed her and walked away without explanation. "It's really you," Jordan stepped forward, that same old smile tugging at his lips. "I didn't expect to see you here, not in New York." Isabelle steadied herself. "Hello, Jordan." He scanned her face, then smiled again. "You look different, but still just as beautiful." She didn't respond, only nodded politely. They sat on a bench near the children's reading area. Lucas was lost in his book, unaware of the past unfolding a few feet away. "I heard you were back in the city," Jordan said. "Honestly, I'm glad." "Why?" she asked bluntly, eyes steady. "Because I still think about you, Isabelle." His voice was low. "I know I messed up. I lost you because I was stupid. But I never stopped remembering you." She clenched her hands. There was a time she would have given anything to hear those words. But now, they came too late. "Jordan, I'm not the girl you left behind," she said firmly. "I forgave you a long time ago, but that doesn't mean I want you back." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "Just a chance to try again." Isabelle looked him dead in the eyes. "I have a new life now. I have a child. And there's someone I love." Jordan stiffened. "It's Nathaniel Cruz, isn't it?" She nodded. "You love him?" She drew a deep breath. No fear, no hesitation. "Yes, I've loved him for a long time. It just took me too long to face it, and to admit it." Jordan looked at her, pain in his eyes, but no fight left in him. He stood, gave her a small nod. "Then, I hope he makes you happy." She watched him walk away, the man who once shattered her heart. There was no anger, no regret. Only one truth remained. For the first time in her life, she knew exactly where her heart belonged. That night, after Lucas had gone to sleep, Isabelle walked into the living room, where Nathaniel sat reading, the soft lamplight casting a quiet glow on his thoughtful face. Her heart thumped wildly, not from fear of rejection, but because, for the first time, she was about to bare her heart completely. "Nathaniel," she said softly. He looked up. His gaze was calm, but guarded. "Can we talk?" she asked. He closed the book and nodded. Isabelle sat across from him, her fingers laced tightly, palms damp with sweat. But her eyes didn't look away this time. "I know. What I did in the past can't be undone," she began. "I left. I kept Lucas from you. I let you live in pain for far too long." Nathaniel said nothing, no reaction, no interruption. "I used to think keeping my distance was the safest way. For Lucas, for myself," she continued. "But I was wrong. I didn't just take away your right to be a father. I stole our chance to love again." She swallowed hard and met his gaze. "I love you, Nathaniel. I've loved you for a long time. I was just too much of a coward to face it. I let fear win over love." He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, looking at her. And for the first time in months, his eyes held no defense. Isabelle took a deep breath and stood up. Her knees trembled, her pride screamed against it, but her heart only whispered one thing: "Don't let him go again." Then she knelt before him. "Nathaniel Cruz," she said, voice trembling but clear, "would you marry someone as flawed as me?" The room fell silent. Nathaniel didn't answer right away. He looked at her, this woman who had once walked away, who had broken him, but who had also given him a son, and now knelt before him with her entire heart laid bare. A tear slid down his cheek, then another. "You don't need to kneel," he whispered hoarsely. "I don't deserve to be loved like this after everything." She shook her head. "No, I'm the one who doesn't deserve it, but I don't want to live another day without you." Nathaniel leaned forward and took her hands in his. He gently pulled her up to her feet. He didn't say yes, but his arms wrapped tightly around her, his face buried in her shoulder, and the tears that fell into her hair said everything. In that moment, Isabelle knew she had been forgiven, and they were starting over, not from the beginning, but from where everything once fell apart. They sat beside each other for a long while after that moment. No words, just slow, steady breaths, fingers woven together, and glances that spoke what had been hidden for far too long. Finally, Nathaniel broke the silence, his voice barely louder than a whisper. "I never stopped loving you, Isabelle." She froze. He gently tightened his grip. Even when you left, even when you hid our son, even when I tried to hate you just to survive. My heart refused. Tears streamed again down Isabelle's cheeks, this time not from regret, but from relief. I know, she whispered. I just hoped it wasn't too late. Nathaniel shook his head. It's never too late, not when we still have a chance to begin again. He looked at her, that same gaze, soft and steady, like every moment in their lives had led them to this one. I accept, he said, a rare, tender smile blooming on his face. If your proposal is still on the table. Isabelle laughed through her tears and nodded quickly. It is, completely. The next morning, when Lucas woke up, he found his parents sitting together on the balcony, sipping coffee, something he'd never seen before. What's going on? Lucas asked, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Nathaniel waved him over, lifting him into his lap. Lucas, he said, your mom and I have something very important to tell you. The boy's eyes widened. What is it? Isabelle smiled and took her son's hand. Your dad and I are getting married, she said. Again, and this time, it's for you, and for us. Lucas looked between them, then burst into a grin. So, I finally have a real family? Nathaniel pulled him into a hug and nodded. That's right, a real family. That night they sat together, beginning the first pages of their new family journal. They didn't talk about the past anymore, only the present and the promises they were ready to make, the birthdays Nathaniel had missed. The sleepless nights Isabelle endured alone, the days Lucas grew up without his father's arms around him, all of it would be loved again from the beginning. 1 month later, on a soft golden afternoon in early fall, they held their second wedding. No extravagant dress, no fancy invitations, just close family, a few dear friends, a small garden full of flowers and laughter. But to Isabelle, it was the most beautiful wedding she could have imagined, because this time there was no fear, only love. Before the ceremony began, Isabelle knelt in front of Lucas, adjusting his tiny collar. Are you ready? She asked. Lucas nodded, eyes shining. I get to walk you down the aisle. I'm the most important person today. She laughed through a swell of tears. No, your dad is, but I'm lucky to have you. He squeezed her hand. Then, let's surprise him, okay? And when the music started, Lucas, in his tiny vest, proudly held his mother's hand and led her down the aisle, where guests turned to watch with warm smiles. Nathaniel stood at the end, heart racing. His eyes never left them, the woman he loved and the son he cherished. At the altar, Lucas gently let go of Isabelle's hand, stepping back, his face glowing with pure, innocent joy. Isabelle and Nathaniel locked eyes, no word spoken, yet everything was understood. The pain they had lived through, the time they had lost, and above all, the promise never to let go again. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, the three of them sat on a blanket in the grass, watching the sky fade into a golden-orange sunset. Lucas rested his head on his father's lap and whispered, "Today was the best day ever." Isabelle leaned into Nathaniel's shoulder. "How are you feeling?" He wrapped his arm around her. "Like I've finally come home." She closed her eyes, letting herself feel every breath beside her, the steady rhythm of a heart that stayed, and a little one that made everything worth it. In that moment, no memories, no dreams, only now. A present that was whole, a happiness that was real, a complete family. Not perfect, but finally, together. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of love, forgiveness, and second chances. If Isabelle and Nathaniel's story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who believes in true love, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that it's never too late to begin again. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember, love always finds its way.